Hi, dear students and my dear friends. As you know, we were discussing about the world classic writers, and we have discussed a lot about how to find out the world classic writers and world classic books. So, for that, I have already devoted a lecture on it, and in that part 1, I have completely gave a list of writers from the Booker Prize from the beginning, and in that lecture we completed till 1980. Okay, and in that particular year when William Golding won the Booker Prize. Now in our part 2 lecture we will begin from 1981. In 1981 we have come across a name whose name is almost known to everybody, and he is Salman Rushdie, and his most famous magic realism work, that is Midnight Children, and for that he won 1981 Booker Prize. Here in that book it deals with transition from British colonialism to independence and the partition of India. Here the story is told by its protagonist Salim Sinai, and as I have already discussed, it is a magic realism work, and for your kind information, it was also awarded the Booker of Booker. Apart from it, there are other books or other works which were also shortlisted, and among them the most important one is also Molly Keane's The Good Behavior. The Good Behavior talks about the story of Irish society in the early 20th century, and the book narrated by a girl, and her name was Aaron. She has a cold mother and a gay brother, and having a society interested in all unseen or excused good behavior. The next book by Doris Lessing, The Syrian Experiments, is also worth noting. It is one of the best examples of science fiction, and it is included in her Canopus at Argon series. The next work by Ian McEwan, The Comfort of Strangers. It is a kind of a work set in an unnamed city with the spending of holiday of two central characters, and their name were Mary and Colin. The novel has been made a screenplay, and it was done by one of the absurd writer, and his name was Harold Painter. And the next work like that by Muriel Spark is also an important one. The name of the work is Loitering with Intent. It contains many autobiographical references to Muriel Spark's early career. The last one, the White Hotel by D.M. Thomas, is also important. The book is told principally in the form of an erotic journal, letters between the female narrator and a fictional Sigmund Freud, and Freud's case history analysis of the narrator. Now let's go forward. That is 1981. In 1981, Thomas Keneally, he was awarded the Booker Prize for Schindler's Ark. Schindler's Ark it also has another title too. The name of it is Schindler's List. Okay, the book which was published in UK, it is called Schindler's Ark, and when it was published in USA, it called Schindler's List. As you know, Thomas Keneally was an Australian, and the book here tells the story of Oskar Schindler. He is a member of the Nazi Party who becomes unlikely hero by saving the lives of 1,100, and you can say 1,100 Polish Jews during the Holocaust. The novel is a kind of a non-fictional novel, and it describing actual people and places with fictional events, dialogues, scenes, and reconstructed dialogues where you can say the exact details are unknown. And here you can also go for the work by Timothy Moore, that is Sour Sweet. It's a kind of comic fiction, and the story follows the tribulations of a Hong Kong Chinese immigrant and his initially reluctant wife as they attempt to make a home for themselves in 1960s London. Now go for 1983. And here G.M. Coetzee, he won the Booker Prize for the first time, and he received that prize for a second time later, and we will discuss the work too, the life and times of Michael Kay. In this novel, you will see a man named Michael Kay who makes a arduous journey from Cape Town to his mother's rural birthplace amid a fictitious civil war. And during the part and of that time, there was a kind of movement that is called apartheid era in the 1970s to 1980s. And if you talk about the shortlisted writers, you can go for Salman Rushdie. And Salman Rushdie's famous work Same. The book was written in the style of magic realism too. The novel portrays the lives of Iskandar Harappa. He is sometimes assumed to be Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And there is another character, General Raja Haider, who is assumed to be Muhammad Zia-ul Haq. And their relationship is a matter of subject. The central theme of the novel is that begetting same begets violence. And you can go for also Graham Swift's Waterland. It is also a famous one. Graham Swift's Waterland is a kind of book which is concerned with the nature and importance of history as the primary source of meaning in a narrative. The novel is very much related with new historicism. Now let's go forward to the 1984. And here Anita Bruckner received the Nobel Prize for Hotel du Lac. The book Hotel du Lac is a kind of novel, and it talks about Edith Hope. I think you have remembered the name Edith Hope. He is an Australian writer. He is an Australian writer. He was a romance novelist who is staying in a hotel on the shore lake of Geneva, and there she meets other English visitors, and including other writers too. And here you can go for also Julian Burns' Flaubert's Parrot. It is a really significant one. And Julian Burns is very much famous for her writing, and he is a British writer too. Here in that novel, it talks about our amateur Gustav Flaubert expert Geoffrey Bathwaite's musings on his subject's life and his son as he looks for a soft parrot that inspired the great author. The next work by Anita Desai, the name of it is like that, In Custody. It is a novel that is set in New Delhi. Okay, and it is dealing with search of meaning of life, exploring themes of identity and language using Urdu poetry. And here Devin Sharma is the main character of the novel. The next work that is at the end by David Lodge, and it is named Small World. It is a kind of an academic romance, and it is one of the finest campus novels in Lodge's campus trilogy. And his other two novels are like that, Changing Places and Nice work. Now let's go for 1985. In 1985, Carey Hume won the Booker Prize for his work The Bone People. Carey Hume was born in New Zealand. And the novel here is an unusual story of love dividing into two major sections. The first one involving the characters interacting with each other, and the second one it's about involving their individual travels to several places. And if you talk about the shortlisted writers and their work, you can go for Doris Lessing's The Good Terrorist. The book Good Terrorist is a political novel, and the protagonist of the novel is Alice, a name drifter. He squats with a group of radicals in London and is drawn into their terrorist activities. And you can go for Iris Mudrock. To Iris Mudrock's The Good Apprentice is also another world classic. In that book, The Good Apprentice, and Iris Mudrock talks about Edward Baltram, who is overwhelmed with guilt, and he tries to prank which has gone wrong. Now the year 1986. In 1986, Kingsley Amis won the Booker Prize for his work named The World Devils. The book talks about Olun Weaver. He is a writer of modest celebrity. He returns to his native Wales with his wife Rhiannon. She sometimes you can say the girlfriend of Weaver's, and she is also an old acquaintance of Peter Thomas, who is in the novel. And here a good work by Margaret Atwood, though it is not selected for the Booker Prize, but it is damn good to be read, and even it is prescribed in many of our syllabuses. The book is a dystopian novel, and it is set in a near future New England, in a totalitarian state. And that state is known as Gilead, that has overthrown the United States government. The novel has also themes of subjugation of women in a patriarchal society, and various other means by which these women resist and attempt to gain individuality and independence. And you can go also for Kazuo Ishiguro's work, An Artist of the Floating World. The book is also an important one. It set in post-World War II in Japan and is narrated by Masuji Ono. He is an aging painter who looks back on his life and how he has lived it. The novel also deals with the role of people in a rapidly changing environment. Now, in 1987, Penelope Lively won the Booker Prize for Moon Tiger. It spans the time before, during, the after World War II too. The novel is written from multiple points of view and moves backward and forward throughout the story. And here you can find the name of Chinua Achebe and his work Anthology of the Savannah. The novel, that is Anthology of Savannah, takes place in the imaginary West African country of Kangan. Achebe here describes the political situation through the experiences of three friends. Among them, the first one is Chris Oriko, second one Beatrice Oka, and the girlfriend of Krish. And you can go for also Iris Mudrock. Iris Mudrock work, the book and the Brotherhood is also one to be read by all. The novel here talks about the story of a group of close friends living in England in 1980s. Now in 1988. 1988, Peter Carey, an Australian, won the Booker Prize for his Oscar and Lucinda. The book tells the story of Oscar Hopkins. He is the Devonian son of a Plymouth named Brenton Minster. On the other hand, Lucinda Leplestier, she's a young Australian heiress who buys a glass factory. And here about the shortlist writers, you can read out the names and also the works. And for further study, you can go for Salman Rushdie's Satanic Force. And if you have time, you can go for the other works. But for exam point of view, I will suggest that just remember the names and the writer. The next year, in 1989, Kazuo Ishiguro receives the Booker Prize for The Remains of the Day. The book, that is The Remains of the Day, talks about the protagonist Stevens. Stevens is a butler with a long record of service at Darlington Hall. The hall is stately home near Oxford, England. In 1956, he takes a road trip to visit a former colleague, and at that particular place, he reminisces about the events at Darlington Hall in the 90s, 20s, and 1930s. And here, Margaret Atwood's Cat's Eye, which was also among the others to be shortlisted. The book talks about a controversial painter named Elaine Risley. He vividly reflects on her childhood and teenage years. Her strongest memoirs are of Cordelia, who was the leader of a trio of girls who were both very cruel and very kind to her. The novel also unfolds in the mid-20th century Canada, from World War II to the late 1980s. And it is also included a look at many of the cultural elements of that time period, including that is of feminism and various modern art movements. Apart from it, John Benville's The Book of Evidence is also important. Here, the book is narrated by Freddie Montgomery. He is a 38-year-old scientist who murders a servant girl during an attempt to steal a painting from a neighbor. Freddie is a perspective observer of himself and his surroundings. He is largely amoral. Another work by James Kelman named Disaffection. The book is written in the Scottish dialect, centering on a 29-year-old school teacher, and his name was Patrick Doyle. And you can go for also 1989 work Rose the Main Restoration. The novel That Restoration tells the story of Robert Merivale, who begins the book as a medical student, studying alongside his serious practical friend John Pheves. Now go for 1990. In 1990, A.C. Byrd won the Booker Prize for Possession, or it has another subtitle like that of Romance. Here, the novel explores the postmodern concerns of similar other novels, which are often categorized as historiographic metafiction, a kind of genre that blends approaches from both historical fiction and metafiction. So that's all for today. That is for part 2. We will talk about the later years Booker Prize winners and the shortlisted writers. I know it is a little bit lengthy, or you can say the process is a lengthy one, but I think it is a better way to give you the whole crux of the matter. That is just talking about the names and the writers and the books and the year. It will not be enough for you to understand what is important and what is not. So that's why this is my way of discussing with you, so that you can grasp the things in a better way. So thank you, and wait for the later videos or later part, so that you can get the glimpses of all of it. Thank you. Have a great day.